Force USA packed the C20 with so many features. I'm not sure there's another rack on the market that can do as much as this can. And it comes with so much stuff. But let's not sugarcoat it. It's expensive. So I wasn't sure how I felt about it at first. Don't get me wrong, it's very well done. Well, for the most part. It's got one of the best Smith machines I've seen on an all-in-one rack, the heaviest low row on the market. The low row and lat pull down have unilateral capabilities. Of course, there's the articulating arms. Everything works well. It's one of the best options. And I say that having reviewed and tested just about everything out there. So we're gonna make some comparisons to see where the C20 ranks. If any of the items we talk about interest you, I've linked them in the description, and those links and our Patreon are the best way to support the channel. Before we get to the comparisons though, let me show you what these things can do. The star of the show on any rack like this is the arms, and we've seen a lot of these things lately. If you're not familiar with arms like these, not only can they rotate in and out, but they can also pivot up and down, giving them a ton of versatility. Seriously, there's almost an unlimited amount of ways in which you can use these, and they are the next big trend. Trust me when I say there's so many companies working on arms like this. Force's arms are a little unique in that you can lock them in place or allow them to freely rotate inward and outward, which is why they named them the freestyle pulley arms. Not a very good name, nor is this a feature I use very often, mostly because it doesn't match my training style, but I'm always a big fan of adding features if they don't detract from other things or add to the price, and I don't think these arms do either of those things. They can tilt up or down and lock into 4 different positions and have about 90 degrees of rotation there, and then all the way at the bottom, your pull point is about 6 inches off the floor, which is pretty much the same as GetRx Tornado arms, and it gives them a little more versatility than arms that don't tilt. But they can also go all the way to the top, and then when locked in, your pull point's about 88 inches. Technically, it's a little bit lower when you actually pull on it, but that's great because that means you're never gonna be limited on your range of motion for those high pulls. They can also pivot in and out and lock into 5 different positions. It gives them almost 180 degrees of rotation. It's not quite 180 because I don't want this pin hitting the handle here. But one of the things you'll notice on all-in-one racks is they can be a bit cluttered. They can kind of get in their own way. This pull-up bar is actually removable, by the way. You just pull off these 2 knurled nuts in the back, and then once it's on there, the whole thing is rock solid. This rack is a tank, but that's a good example of Force's attention to detail on this thing. Not because I think the pull-up bars are actually in the way. The lat pull down's right here, so if I wanted to do any heavy pulls, I could just use that. But if for some reason you thought they were in the way, you could just remove them or move them somewhere else. But it's that combined functionality of pivoting up and down or in and out that gives you a ton of freedom in how you can use these. And it makes for a fantastic functional trainer. Legitimately, this thing's really good even if I'm about to nitpick it. If I want to go wide, my pull points are about 75 inches apart. The pull is smooth. I've got consistent rotation. And since I've got a 2-to-1 pulley ratio, I've got plenty of cable travel. And that 2-to-1 ratio, as the sticker says, gives me a 10-pound starting weight. Except it's a 2-to-1 pulley ratio, so I'd have twice the cable travel, right? But half the weight, so it'd be a 5-pound starting weight, except it's actually 7.5 pounds. But what kind of whiny nerd would even test that and point it out? Most people probably wouldn't even notice the extra 2.5 pounds, which they actually do give you. So they have these integrated adder weights that you can drop down to give you 2.5-pound weight increments, and they store right back up the top there. Most companies all-in-ones have 5-pound jumps, except Reps Aries 2.0 with their integrated adders. So the adders are a nice touch. One of my issues with a lot of these rack cable trainers is their 10-pound or higher starting weights don't work for my wife on certain movements. Luckily, at 7.5 pounds, the C20 is light enough that it does, but 5 pounds would be better for her and for people who are rehabbing. If Force does a soft update, and they are pretty good at listening to feedback, they're already working on a version 4 of the compact leg press hack squat that Winnie reviewed, and based on her and the community's feedback, they're making some tweaks there. So it wouldn't be that hard for them to tweak this top plate so that the stickers and weight increments make a little more sense. Also, since we're nitpicking, which I think we're allowed to do with how much this costs, can we get a hole in the top plate for the mag pin? Yes, it's a mag pin, and I can just stick it in whichever hole I want, but I mean, it's not that hard to fix. Also, this thing's not tethered, so it's only a matter of time before my wife misplaces it or one of my kids runs off with it and we never see it again. Since we're nitpicking and comparing, these arms are easy enough to move. Maxims are probably the easiest I've seen to move up and down the rack. rx'd original tornado arms were pretty bad before they added rollers to them. These are somewhere in between. This trolley is essentially Rep's trolley, to be honest. So this is the Ares 2.0. It's the same trolley you'd find on the Athena and for the most part the Adonis. And at 7 pounds, this moves very easily. The problem is, once you add the arms to that basic trolley, it's not gonna move as easily because you've got all this weight cantilevering out. But by balancing it with your second hand, it's easy enough and Winnie has no issues moving them. I can also bring these arms into about 18 inches apart, which is an absolutely fantastic distance for, you guessed it, on this channel at least, Bayesian curls. In all seriousness, their adjustability gives the C20 almost limitless possibilities. Of course, all that adjustability does give them a little bit of play. So you'll see as I move through this range of motion, there's a little bit of lateral movement. They wiggle a little bit, and then as I lift off, they may jump a little bit. But I loaded one of these things with 180 pounds of weight, and it was rock solid. And during actual use, I don't really notice any movement. And rx'd arms, the Tornado arms, and Maxim arms are gonna do the same exact thing, and the list goes on. Luckily, we don't have to load these arms with 400 pounds because we've got the integrated lat pull down and low row right here. And I think that their integration is kind of brilliant. So we've got the dual pull points, those independent stacks, and they've kept that functionality on the lat low, but I can also connect the stacks very easily just by using this connector right here. And now this allows me to go real heavy, but I can also keep them independent if I want to, giving me the best of both worlds. Now, connectors like this aren't unique. I've got ones from Bells of Steel, rx'd, and lots of other companies. But one of the things I don't like about, I gotta stop jumping on things. One of the things I don't like about the Ares 2.0 is the banana connection system. Right now, I've got it linked for the lat low, but if I wanna take this off and use it unilaterally, I've gotta remove these 2 thumb screws so I can get the banana connector off. Then these have to go back on. Then I've gotta put my carabiners on and then my attachments, and then realize during this whole thing, even though I'm 6 foot tall, I'm still standing on a bench to do it. This system is just a lot easier, and the eye bolt rotates. So I'm not using swivel shackles or daisy chaining carabiners to get the attachments to rotate the right way. Or maybe I just didn't tighten it fully. Anyway, that's not what I meant when I said brilliant. This is the only dual stack low row I can think of where they're using a true 1-to-1 pulley ratio. So if I set both of these sides to 200 pounds and actually attach my attachment, then now I've got 400 pounds to work with. And it's not that it's too heavy, I didn't adjust the telescoping foot plate. So now that we're good in here, I mean, just look at that full range of motion. It's because I didn't warm up yet. But if this weren't enough weight for you, you could upgrade the stacks to 250 or 300 pounds each, giving you potentially 600 pounds to work with. As a low row, it's solid. You can get a deep stretch by adjusting the telescoping foot plate. The stacks go insanely heavy, and you can even prop yourself up on something if you don't want to sit on the floor. For lat pulls, I could use the stacks independently, you know, those unilateral pull points, but I think I'm just gonna link this together so that I can show you a few things. Now we're just gonna pull a bench in here, and you'll notice even if this other arm was in here, the bench would actually fit. But one of the things you're gonna notice about all-in-one racks like this that have this much functionality is sometimes you're gonna be moving your spotter arms or J-cups to use the arms. Things can get in each other's way. Not functionally, because you can just move stuff out of the way, but for example, you'll wanna have this Smith machine up high so you're not stepping over it all the time. But you will notice with it up high, I'm 6 foot tall and I've got plenty of clearance. I should really move that before I step over this. All right, we're gonna set up our lat pull down. So let's start by throwing an attachment on there. We'll take a little bit of weight off so I'm not showing off again. And then I'm gonna anchor myself with my surplus strength leg rollers. And now I've got a lat pull down. Now, I know somebody at home's screaming at their phone saying, "Look, you're not optimizing the stretch on your lats. You're not pulling straight down." Well, first of all, stop yelling at your phone. Nobody can hear you. But second, if I turn myself around, now at 6 foot tall, I've got a full stretch, a great range of motion, and can pull straight down and even play with my positioning. It's a solid lat pull down. The pull is smooth, and with a 2-to-1 pulley ratio, I've got 100 pounds per side to work with, or 200 pounds total with them linked. And of course, you can upgrade the stacks if you need more weight. If the lat pull down and low row seem a little redundant, since technically you could emulate those movements using the arms, I'd argue having an integrated lat and low row is better because I don't have to link things together to make it work. Anchoring myself isn't an issue, there's just less workarounds. That doesn't mean the C20 doesn't feel a bit cluttered at times. It has a fairly large footprint for what's essentially a half rack, since you can't bench or squat inside of it. That being said, it is a great rack. Now, it's not particularly compact. You do have to work out outside of it off the spotters, but the included attachments and accessories, and there are an absurd amount of them, are well done. The landmine with magnetic storage, the knurled handles that integrate into the spotters. I think there's 7 or 8 cable attachments they throw in. The aluminum ones are nice because they attach very easily overhead, and actually they're just in general easy to handle. I do wish they were fully knurled. I know that the bends in this qualify it as an easy curl bar, but that's more nitpicky than anything. And I can't overemphasize the amount of stuff this comes with. Actually, 8 spring collars and a set of Olympic collars to hold your plates on your bar. I mean, what do I need all these for? Now, they are doing things a little bit uniquely with the spotters and the J-cups. So when you attach them, they sit on these 2 grooves. So they just slide in on the rack, and then once they're locked into position, I mean, they're not going anywhere. Now, don't out-idiot me and knock yours off the rack and be like, "Gluck said they weren't gonna go anywhere." But once they're on, they're rock solid. And it's kind of a cool way to do things. And they've got a lot of kind of unique touches like that and cool touches throughout. The accents on the arms and top cross members look great. The trolley handles are on the inside of the rack, which is kind of nice because when you rack and unrack, your plates aren't hitting them. The storage shelf and pegboard is a nice touch, and I really should move some of this stuff before I trip on it. So here's the pegboard, and they've got these hooks that you can even put on the shrouds in certain places. And I do like that they've got that integrated system, but I wish it wasn't just a purely proprietary system. This only works over there. Wall control is one of my favorite storage systems for a home gym, but this basket is just off Amazon and it works with their system just like their own proprietary custom hooks do. And they've got an absurd amount of different options on how to hang things. Or maybe the absurd part is the amount of cable attachments I've collected, but maybe you should subscribe to see what I'm cooking up. Now, the C20 is Force's first real 3x3 rack. So 4-way, 1-inch holes, 2-inch hole spacing, and it's built from 11 gauge steel. That's the same thing you'd find on Rep's PR5000, Rogue's Monster Rack, and every other company's top of the line racks, which means you can leverage other companies' attachment ecosystems on here. So these are from Surplus Strength. I'm just gonna pull this arm out of the way. These J-cups are from Irwin Fitness. I'm dodging things here. Now, this is built for a customary rack, so an inch rack, but it fits fine. And then over here, I've got Rep's Pegasus. This is built for a metric rack. And you can see all of these things fit perfectly fine. Now, that doesn't mean every single thing is going to fit on here. This is a metric rack, even if the name Force USA might make you think otherwise, and the fact that they subtly try to hide that fact with the People's Republic of China acronym on that sticker. Metric and customary racks have subtle size differences. So, like I said, not everything's going to fit perfectly, but that's not what I meant. Most 3x3 racks have 4-way hole spacing on every upright and cross member, which makes them modular and future-proof. You can add on to them in any direction and have a ton of freedom in how you build your rack. On the C20, all your connection points are actually using 1/2-inch hardware. So you see it here, there, the pulleys, different brackets, and elsewhere. And on this top cross member, there's no 1-inch holes at all, and there's just a very limited amount of 1-inch holes on the bottom, which may limit what you can put on here. For example, there's physically no spot for my Darko anchor, and I can't use my Black Widow extensions that I use to store things on. Does it matter to most people? Probably not. This rack is pretty loaded as is, but it's also pretty expensive, so it's probably your forever rack, so those little things might matter. Now, the Smith machine on this is probably one of the best I've seen on an all-in-one rack. Since it's a flat foot rack, the bar on this goes real low. I've seen a few of these where Winnie can't even get the bar below her knees. It's smooth and there's no lateral deflection, so you'll see when I try to tilt it side to side, it stays rigid in the center, and the build quality on this thing is outstanding. Actually, the whole thing throughout is rock solid. Most Smith machine bars kind of suck, but the knurling on this is really good, and the rack is deep enough that you can pretty much do whatever movement you want in here. I guess if I had one complaint, it would be nice if this Smith bar was counterbalanced, but maybe I just got spoiled by Maxim's counterbalanced Smith. But this only weighs 35 pounds, so it's really not a big deal. That being said, not everyone is gonna want or need all of this. So I love to see a version where they offer some of those included accessories a la carte, or maybe you could remove the Smith because you want something a little more compact. Or maybe this is just too much money because at $6,500 shipped, oh wait, no, I forgot. Code Gluck saves 5% at Force USA. So at just under $6,200 shipped, it still isn't cheap. But giving you options is never a bad thing. It's a very well-made and designed system. The build quality is good throughout. It's packed with features. We didn't even talk about the port over here that allows you to use the sliding bench with the C20, so you can do leg press, hack squats, and leg curls and other movements. Although, how do I put this? Force didn't seem too confident that I'd like that one, so they didn't send it for review like they did this. All right, where does that put the C20 against other top of the line options? Because at this price point, that is what they're competing with. The problem is, there's not a whole lot of one-to-one comparisons. Rep's PR5000 with an Aries 2.0 built as close as you can get to this will be a few $100s less, but that's without Rep's Smith machine or their free motion arms, because neither are out yet, and that's with me matching the accessories as best I can. You'd have a true 6-post rack you could work inside of, the functional trainer, a little better build quality, dual pull points on the lat and low row, and a more modular 3x3 rack with a better developed ecosystem, but it's not quite an apples to apples comparison, even if it is a great rack system. Now, Rogue has quite a few variations of their rack cable systems. We've reviewed all of them. They're fantastic, but again, no arms, no Smith machine, and you definitely aren't saving money at Rogue, but man, is that American-made build quality unmatched. Those systems are so smooth and so well done, but I'd be lying if I didn't say that sometimes I find myself gravitating towards racks with arms like this. GetRx'd has a lot more options on how you can build their tornado racks, including with or without the Smith, but they don't have a dedicated lat pull down or low row, so you may be left linking things or finding workarounds to make things work. They are much cheaper though, but as you start adding the price of all the accessories and attachments, that price difference might not seem as drastic as you think, which is where Maxim comes in. Their rack surprised me with how good it was. The arms were well done, as well as the Smith machine, although it definitely had its quirks for sure, but it's another option where you can get a ton of included accessories. Still, without a true lat and low row, you may find yourself doing some workarounds on certain exercises. Which means at the moment, if all this functionality is what you're looking for, this is probably the most well-rounded option. It is a great rack system. Thank you so much to our Patreons for keeping this channel alive, and thanks for watching.